This tutorial is going to cover types and variables. Before we begin, make sure you have Java and the Java JDK downloaded on your computer. You can run Java Desk version in your terminal to check. Also, make sure you have the IntelliJ downloaded on your computer. So some vocab. A type is a category or set of data values. It affects the types of operations that can be performed on the data, and in Java, you always need to specify the type for data. And then primitive types are the 8 simple types for numbers and text, etc. in Java. Why do languages need types? Computers see information as a long stream of ones and zeros. Types tell the computer how to view those ones or zeros. Each type has distinct properties, value ranges, and numbers of ones and zeros it takes up. So here's a simple chart of the 8 primitive types in Java. You have a byte, which is an 8-bit signed whole number, a short, which is a 16-bit signed whole number, an integer, which is a 32-bit signed whole number, and finally a long, which is a 64-bit signed whole number. And the number of bits that something takes up just tells you how the number range for the values. And that number range is 2 to the n minus 1. So 8 bits goes from negative 128 to positive 127. 16 bits goes from negative 32,768 to positive 32,767, and so on from there. And the more bits you take up, the larger your data ranges are. And then for floating point numbers, a float is a 32-bit non-whole number, a double is a 64-bit floating point number, and then a Boolean is a truth value, so it can either be true or false. And a character is a 16-bit Unicode character. For example, a single A or a single B, and those always have to be inside the single quotes. So here are some example assignments. For all of the variable types that can be integers, you could just set them equal to the number you want them to be directly, except for a long. Longs have to have an L after them for you to know that it's going to be a long. A float, you would denote with 0.0 or whatever decimal you want to put in there with an F after it. For a double, it's just whatever the decimal number is. For a Boolean, as I said before, it's either true or false, and you set those directly with the words true or false. So Boolean truthy equals true, and then Boolean falsy would be equal to false. Char C1 is equal to a capital A, or you can set the char equal to a number. In this case, capital A corresponds to 65, and you can find what numbers correspond to which letters in Unicode ASCII tables. A note on variable names, and the names are here after the type. So the name of this variable is F, the name of this variable is D, and so on. So the different languages have different conventions for variable names. For all languages, variable names must start with a letter, can contain numbers and letters, cannot contain spaces, and should be descriptive and easy to understand. In Java, regular variable names are camel case, so there's no spaces, but at the point we are going to have a new word, you put a capital letter. And then constants in Java, which we'll discuss later, are all caps and snake case. So all the letters are capitalized, but where there would be spaces, you put underscores. The 4 types you'll use a lot are integers for whole numbers, doubles for non-whole numbers, Booleans for true or false, and then a character, a char, for a single character. Some sample code. So here are the examples of the 4 main types you'll be using. So for instance, int height in inches is 64, and that'll tell you I am 64 inches tall. Height in feet, 5.33. This will print out I am 5.33 feet tall. Over 6 feet is false because I am not over 6 feet, and this will print out am I over 6 feet tall? No. It'll say am I over 6 feet tall? False. And last initial is a capital A, and this will print out my last name starts with an A. So in this case, you have to have this plus between the variable names and any text that you want to print out. And you also have to have quotes around any text that you're printing. Some last note on types. When deciding which type to use for a variable, try to pick the one that makes the most sense. Don't use a double when you aren't going to use the decimal part of it, for example. So examples of this would be the number of days it rained last year would be an integer. The average of a group of numbers should be a double. If the current month has a y in it, that's a boolean. And to keep track of the first letter name would be a character. So here's a practice problem. Let me get this screen split here. Okay, so for the practice problem, we want you to write a program with different types of variables in it. Your variables should have names that make sense and should kind of go together. Try to practice making variables of each type and then printing them out. So here I'm going to right click and do new Java class, and I'm going to call this types and variables, and that'll give me types and variables.java. So now I'm going to double click to make that left pane go away, and then I'm going to do public static void main string args, and we always need this string args here in the main method. I'll explain more about what it is later. So now that we have our main method, we can actually write out what we want to do. So the first thing is I want an integer for my age. So I'm going to say int age equals 25. And then I want a double for the cost of my last meal. So I'm going to put double cost of last meal equals, and I'm going to make it up and say that it was 5.78. If I have any pets, so I'm going to say boolean has pets equals false, since I don't have any. And my favorite number less than 10 as a character. So this is a character because it's going to be a single character, and I wanted to point out that I can make characters that are also numbers, not just letters. So I'm going to say char favorite number equals 7. Now you have to be careful. If I had put char favorite number equals 7, that's a much different thing. This would be saying I want a character with the ASCII value of 7, but I want the character that is 7, so I have to put it in single quotes. So now I want to do the print statements for each of these. So I'm going to go back in and add print statements underneath all of the declarations of these variables. So I'm going to say system.out.println, and now I'm going to put my I am age years old. And then another system.out.println, system.out.println, my last meal cost plus cost of last meal. And then, missing a semicolon. I'm going to say system.out.println I have pets plus has pets. And now I'm going to say system.out.println my favorite number is, and see how this, so a note real quick, you see how this has a gray line underneath it? It's telling me that that variable has never been used. And as soon as I do plus favorite number here, the gray line goes away. And whenever I have an error in my code, it'll show up on the edge here. So right now I have a semicolon where I shouldn't have one. And then down here, it's telling me that it's expecting a semicolon. So I'm going to put a semicolon there. And that's just a good way to stay and to check your code as you're writing it to see if you have any errors. If any red shows up on the right here, there's an error, and you can hover over it to tell you what that compile error is. So now I'm going to do run, run, and now I'm going to pick types and variables as what I want to run. And you see up here in this drop down, I have a configuration now for types and variables. And if I do hit this run button, it's going to think down here and then print out everything I want it to print. So I'm 25 years old. My last meal cost $5.78. Do I have pets? False. And my favorite number is 7. And that's it. So this was an overview of types and variables. I hope it was helpful.